Typically, I define cornerstone assets as pieces that you do not need to sell on a rebuilding team or you do not need to sell on a contending team. These are going to be guys that give you short-term production, but have the extended runway where you can still count on production from them over the next few seasons. Now, of course, that's not to say that none of these guys you should look to sell if you decide to rebuild. But a perfect example of this would be like DK Metcalf, who's going to be 26 this season. I mean, you're looking at him saying, okay, well, if I'm a rebuilding team, yeah, I'm going to throw him on the trade block. But if my league mates only want to offer me a 2025 second round pick, I'm going to be completely fine holding on to him. Whereas obviously, if you are sitting with Kupp, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, if you're rebuilding, you're pretty much going to have to sell for whatever you can get. But we are going to make the threshold for this wide receivers that are 26 years old or younger going into this next season. So some of these guys may be turning 26 during the year. Some of them may be much, much younger. Some of them may already be 26. But if they're going to turn 26 before the season starts, like DJ Moore, then they're not going to be included on this list. So I know the age is going to be a little bit of a gray area here, but of course, once you get to 27, 28, 29, 30, I'd just say you probably should be selling those players. But starting off tier one, there's not much to discuss. Jefferson, Chase, Lamb. Jefferson, still wide receiver one for me in Dynasty. In redraft, I actually may take Jamar Chase ahead of Justin Jefferson, just given that it should be a pretty bad situation in Minnesota this next season. But I mean, if you're looking at a Dynasty perspective, I'm not as concerned about the situation for this year. Obviously, you still have the long-term upside when it comes to someone like Justin Jefferson. The situation can change over the next few years, so I'm going to be fine with it. And then looking at Chase versus CeeDee Lamb, I understand the thought process if someone wants to go through and put Lamb ahead of Chase. I mean, we made an in-depth video breaking this down over on flogfantasy.com for anybody wanting to check this out. But ultimately, I do think it kind of comes up to you, or comes down to you, that is. But Chase was better than Lamb had ever been at this age in particular. Now, of course, we'll see what Chase is like now that he is going to be looking at the same age season as what Lamb was just at. But going down to our next tier, we're going to have the 101, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the 102, 103. I know some people are frustrated saying, well, Mason, come on, man, don't put the rookie picks in here. Or Mason, put the rookies in here instead. I want to see Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name instead of the rookie pick. The reason we're doing the rookie pick right now, this will change whenever we actually get to post NFL draft, and most people have already done their rookie drafts, is I want to give everybody a good idea if you were to go through and sell or buy any of these players about what price point I think you should be looking at. It doesn't really help you that much if nobody has Marvin Harrison Jr. on their team for me to already, instead of putting the 102 there, put Harrison there. If someone has the 102, it gives them an idea. Okay, yeah, if I really wanted to sell this for Amon-Ra St. Brown, I can. Now, of course, these rookie picks are going to be for a super flex league. If it was a one quarterback format, the rookie picks would be worth much less than this. Now, going down to our next tier, we are going to have Puka. I mean, obviously, Puka's a perfect example of that cornerstone asset. You go and look at what he did as a rookie. I mean, goes from being someone that I really had no interest in because I'm an idiot to all of a sudden winning leagues and putting up one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons of all time. Now, the long-term outlook may be a little bit tough to project just because we don't necessarily know what Stafford's going to look like in the long term. Maybe at the same time, you say, well, if Kupp's fully healthy this next season, it can be a little bit different with the target share that we see in this offense. But nonetheless, it's hard to deny the fact that obviously Puka was one of the best rookie wide receivers that we've ever seen. I mean, we've seen wide receivers in the Sean McVay offense also break fantasy football before. Now, we're going to go Garrett Wilson in this tier as well. Now, I understand that people are frustrated with Garrett Wilson. You overdrafted him last year if you took him in redraft leagues. We're going to look at his Ohio State league mate in Chris Olave in just 1 second as well. But still, if you take a step back and look at what Wilson's done through the first 2 years of his NFL career, he's absolutely dominated from a market share perspective. If you look at his per game numbers at his age, puts him in a class of elite level wide receivers. I mean, guys like A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, the who's who of wide receiver. And he's done so with some of the worst quarterback play in the entire NFL. So if you expect Rodgers to be better than what Zach Wilson has been over the past few years, it's hard not to give Garrett Wilson the benefit of the doubt here, saying that If he can continue to dominate market share as we've seen over the past few seasons, if the offense does get better, which I think most people are expecting it to, this should be someone that is a lot more exciting than what we have recently seen. Now we're going to throw the 104, 105 here as well. 104, 105. This should be a range where you're seeing guys like Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Malik Neighbors. Obviously, you're not going to have your choice of those players. Pretty much just the end of that tier. I don't necessarily think we need to talk about those players too much, but looking at Olave, this is someone that I know everybody's been screaming, sell, sell, sell. Chris Olave was disappointing this past year. And yes, the expectations were maybe too high on Olave. The quarterback situation wasn't great. But going back to what you were looking at, similar to Garrett Wilson as a rookie, Chris Olave puts up, I mean, we wrote an article about it on flogfantasy.com, puts up a season that puts him in the range of those elite Hall of Fame level wide receivers. I'm not saying he's going to go to the Hall of Fame, but you have to look at this guy and understand that he was a year one, a year two wide receiver over the past 2 seasons with some of the worst quarterback play in the entire NFL. He was a stud prospect, a borderline top 10 NFL draft pick. He's dominated from a market share perspective. I have no concerns with Chris Olave. If you want to dive into the in-depth numbers that we have with them, just pull up the article that we wrote about Olave and Wilson on the site. And of course, if you want to look at all our rankings, including those guys like DJ Moore, including the older guys like AJ Brown, you can find those on flogfantasy.com. If you use code FLOG, you'll get 30% off any sub. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team with a podcast and get all your premium content from all your favorite creators. Now, going down to our next tier, Drake London is someone that I know people are more excited about than Chris Olave. And to be honest with you, I had personally Drake London ranked higher than Olave coming out of school. I thought London was the better prospect coming out of USC. But nonetheless, it's hard to ignore what's happened through the first 2 years where you see Wilson and Olave be in phenomenal company based on what you're looking at with their market share numbers. London's dominated targets in his own offense as well. Now, London's also dealt with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. He just hasn't come close to being a viable option in fantasy football. We've seen Wilson at points be a great option in fantasy, even if it was short-lived, with some of the worst quarterback play in the league. London, hasn't really had the target competition. He's had some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. He's had Arthur Smith there as well, so I understand everybody wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. I just have a hard time, even if now the quarterback situation's solved, of going through and ranking Drake London ahead of these guys like Olave and Wilson when we've seen the production from Olave and Wilson in bad situations, and we really haven't seen the production from London. I understand why we're excited about it. I agree that we should be excited about it. But, I don't know to what extent we should be going through and ranking them out of these young studs where we know they are going to produce because we've seen it. Now, Waddle, we're going to have back-to-back with London. I do want to reiterate, if you look at the community rankings on flogfantasy.com, which are free, you can pull them up whenever you want, there you're going to see that you actually have London way ahead of Waddle. I would love to sell high on London. I would love to move over, get Waddle in return and an extra piece on top of him. Waddle's also been a young, proven producer at the wide receiver position. Older than guys like Wilson, older than someone like Olave. Obviously took a step back this past season, but another thing that we have to think about is what's the situation if Tyreek Hill takes a step back anytime soon, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but maybe it's a possibility. Now, afterwards, we're going to go with the 106 and then a 2025 early to mid first. The 106 should be about like Rome. I think probably you're going to see Rome over Bowers. Maybe JJ McCarthy gets mixed in if the Minnesota Vikings actually go out there and trade for him with the top 5 pick. Then we're going to go with Brandon Ayuk and Avonta Smith, 17 and 18. Now, I don't necessarily want to say that these guys are 100% for sure players that we should be building around on a rebuilding team. If you're a rebuilding roster, I think maybe it actually makes sense for you to go out there and possibly throw these players in the trade block. But you do have an extended runway where I think that you can go ahead and you can hold on to them if you don't get a respectable price point. If you try to go ahead and sell Brandon Aiyuk and the best offer you get's the 111, I mean, obviously it sucks if you're put in that situation as a rebuilding roster. But I do think that your best option is probably to just go ahead and probably hold on to him and see if we can get anything better during the season, because these guys are 26, essentially 25, 26. So you are going to have that extended runway. I think we accidentally took Devonta Smith ahead of Brandon Aiyuk in our most recent startup mock draft. They are pretty much back to back. I could go back and forth with these guys. And then honestly, I kind of want to throw the 107 Nico Collins in this same range. If you're looking at the 107, this is probably going to be someone like Bowers. Maybe it's Rome, depending on where McCarthy ends up. And Nico Collins, very similar to what you have with Aiyuk with Smith. The difference in my mind is Aiyuk, Smith, these are round one talents that we've seen the production from an extended period. With Nico Collins, he's actually going higher than these guys in redraft leagues at the moment. But at the same time, if you are looking at them, he's a player that we don't necessarily have the same track record of. I don't want to say he has a cap ceiling. I don't want to say he's going to regress by any means. I think that he can continue to go out there, and I think he can be phenomenal. But with that being said, I always feel a little more comfortable betting into a player that we've seen 2 to 3 great seasons from, rather than someone where we've only had 1 year. Now, going over to what we have with our next tier, we're going to be going with the year 2 wide receivers. We're going to be going with Dell, Addison, Flowers. I previously had Addison ranked atop of this tier. I thought that Jordan Addison was the best prospect of this group. I think in certain ways, he arguably had the best rookie season. I mean, he was a phenomenal player top to bottom. But, I mean, if you are looking at what you have with Jordan Addison, it's just a very uncertain situation with no Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. With Dell, I think you have to have him at the top just because I'm very confident projecting out passing volume and what we have with Houston at the moment. And then with Flowers, I think you can make an argument that Flowers is the better wide receiver than Dell. I mean, Dell is incredibly old. Dell's like a year older than Kyle Pitts. Dell stayed in college forever. Zay Flowers was a 4-year player as well, so he's older than someone like Jordan Addison. But I mean, if we are going to be looking at this, I just think the situation going into the future is probably best for Tank Dell. I mean, all of these guys are players that had a great rookie season, and I think you can be excited to bet on going into the next year. We're going to have the 108 here as well. The 108 is going to be McCarthy, Bowers, pretty much whoever falls. Obviously, McCarthy's a wild card at the moment. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to be looking at T. Higgins, who's another one of these guys. Throw him in the same bucket as like Brandon Aiyuk, Devonta Smith, Nico Collins. Not that he's going to produce to their same level, but if I'm a rebuilding roster, I'm probably going to go through, throw him on the trade block and just see what we can get. I don't necessarily think that we have to go through and sell him, but I think it would be interesting to see what the price point would be. But he does have a little bit of an extended runway. We're going to go with the 109 here as well. Now, the 109's hard to project out who it's going to be. It may end up being Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's the most likely outcome at this point. But, I mean, it could end up being Adonai. I mean, imagine Adonai Mitchell ends up going to the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 32 now. I mean, then all of a sudden, I think that you have a lot of upside there. So, I don't know who it's going to be, but you essentially get your choice of whoever those wide receivers are with the next tier. And then we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think JSN is a wide receiver I loved as a prospect. He disappointed year one. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with the situation that he was in. You can make the argument, Will Mason, he had to play alongside Metcalf. He had to play alongside Tyler Lockett, which is why I am willing to go through and overlook the historical data to a certain extent, because if you do look at the historical data, not great for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Most round one wide receivers that had a similar rookie season, and the vast majority of them end up busting at the next level and don't really have any upside. But I think we can make an exception. I loved him as a prospect. He had a bad situation year one. But it's hard to, in my mind, go through and rank him ahead of someone like Jordan Addison, who had a strong rookie season campaign, and neither of them are in a great situation going into the future. Now, going over to our next player, we're going to be looking at, I don't know if we should rank him at any point. Obviously, Rashee Rice just got in some trouble here. We'll throw in Rashee Rice here with the massive asterisk. So, I am recording this on Easter. This is the day that the Rashee Rice news broke. Maybe you're watching this afterwards, and maybe you have a better idea of what happened and what's going to happen going into the future. So what I am looking at with this Rashee Rice situation is it looks like he is being about as dumb as a person could be. He was street racing, got in an accident. Few people got injured. Very bad news, clearly. And he fled the scene of the crime. Now, is this something I would ever recommend anybody to do? Hell to the no. Is this something I would ever do? Hell to the no. Of course I would not. I drive like your grandma. People get mad at me how slow I go. But with that being said, I don't think this is a Henry Ruggs situation. I don't think he is just a guaranteed to be out of the league. I don't think he's guaranteed to be suspended for a season. I think that maybe this will... I don't want to say it's a Jordan Addison situation, a Chris Olave situation either. But I mean, if you remember, pretty much every offseason, we have guys out there street racing. We have people making dumb decisions and getting pulled over going 140 miles an hour on the... Crazy. In those instances, it's swept under the rug and nobody misses a snap of football. So I don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. He's dumb. He for sure shouldn't have done it. Nobody's going to argue against that. I don't know if this is a 6-game, 8-game, 16-game suspension. I don't know if it's a suspension as all as crazy as that sounds. I just have no idea. So it's going to be hard to rank him. I'll throw him at the top of this tier. If I could sell Rashee Rice and go get the 109, 108, of course I'm doing it in a heartbeat. But would I sell Rashee Rice for a second rounder? Maybe if I'm a lawyer and I understand what's going on, but I'm an idiot and I have no idea. Now we'll go Jayden Reed here at 29. We'll go actually, I probably want to have Reed after the 110 and the mid to late first. I think you make an argument that Reed may be have a better range of outcomes of whoever going to take the 110 or whoever's currently projected out to be the 110, because obviously we've seen Reed be an effective rookie at the NFL level. I just typically would always lean to go with the rookie pick because at this time of the year, you are going to get the added flexibility where, I mean, if you're, say, going through and trying to sell the veteran, you're going to have a limited marketplace. You kind of really need to find a Jayden Reed fan. Whereas if you were to go through and look to sell like a mid to late 2025 first, pretty much anybody in the league is going to buy, right? So when in doubt this time of the year, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the pick. We're going to be going Pickens, Metcalf back-to-back here as well. I understand maybe Metcalf looks extremely low for people on this list. And I would throw Metcalf in the same bucket as like, I don't know, T. Higgins. In that if I'm rebuilding, I'm for sure throwing him on the trade block, seeing if I can get something. I mean, I'm not wanting to hold on to DK Metcalf on a rebuilding roster. But he does have a little bit of an extended runway where if nobody's going to give you anything better than a mid-second round pick, it's like, okay, I'm probably better off holding, seeing if I can use them if I decide to contend in 2025. Or, I don't know, maybe I can get more during the season. Now, going over to the next tier, we're going to be looking at Josh Downs, Christian Watson. I think we would sell either one of these players for any first-round pick in a Superflex league. I think you're going to be putting them about the range of like the early second-rounders. I mean, someone like Downs, and I guess you can throw both players into this list. They're similar in a way in that they both flash early on in their NFL careers, but they're not able to cement themselves as guys that you can comfortably rely upon from a week-to-week perspective. So, I mean, they're still kind of prospects in a way in that they have upside, but it's very hard to project out what you have. But I think that's all I got for you. Really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty. And yeah, if you want to check out all of our rankings, including those guys that are a little bit older, or if you want to check out any of those articles or videos that we discussed, they're on flockfantasy.com. Pretty much all your favorite Dynasty creators are there. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get 30% off any sub. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team in a podcast. And we have a very exciting feature dropping this week on the site for everybody. I'm excited for y'all to check that out. But I think that's all I got for you. Really appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.